The Midnight Visitor. It was past midnight when Ethan Briggs finally leaned back in his worn leather chair, wiping the sweat from his brow. The hum of his garage, with its scattered tools and greasy rags, was a familiar comfort, but tonight it felt different. There was something in the air. The rain outside tapped lightly against the windows, the occasional rattle of thunder breaking the silence, but it was more than the weather that had his senses on edge. The dim glow of the overhead lights flickered, and the sound of dripping water echoed from a leaky pipe in the corner. Ethan had always worked late. That's how he built his reputation. Known around the city as the mechanic who could fix anything. If it had gears, wheels, or wires, he could make it run like new. But tonight, as he turned the final screw on an old motorcycle engine, something about the stillness of the shop made his skin crawl. He stood, stretching his stiff legs. It was nearly 12:30 a.m. He'd already worked an extra hour, tinkering with the last details. The motorcycle was ready to roll, but there was no customer in sight. Just another night of solitude. Then came the hum. At first, it was almost imperceptible. A faint vibration in the floor, like the distant hum of a generator. Ethan frowned, leaning over to make sure his machines weren't malfunctioning. The hum grew louder, stronger. His heart skipped a beat as a sharp, high-pitched sound cracked through the air. An unnatural sound. He froze. The entire garage seemed to vibrate. Tools clattered in their drawers, rattling in the shelves above him. The light from the overhead bulbs flickered again, and this time, it wasn't just the lights. The entire garage dimmed, as if the power was draining. Ethan's hand instinctively reached for the flashlight he always kept in his back pocket, but before he could turn it on, a sudden burst of blue light poured through the open garage door. Ethan squinted against the harsh, electric blue glow, his pulse quickening. Something was approaching, something large. He stepped closer to the door, trying to peer outside through the rain-smeared glass. The blue light pulsed and hummed like the heart of an engine, growing stronger with each passing second. It wasn't the headlights of a car, not even a drone. No, this was something far beyond his understanding. A garage door, half open and barely enough to let a man pass through, began to rumble as if something massive was hovering outside. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He backed away from the door, heart racing, and his hands instinctively found the nearest tool, a wrench. He wasn't sure what was out there, but he was ready for anything. He didn't even know why he grabbed the wrench. Was it instinct? Or was it the flood of adrenaline that coursed through his veins now? The ground shook as the humming grew deafening. Ethan's legs trembled, and he could feel his pulse thudding in his ears. He raised the wrench, ready to defend himself if necessary. Then, without warning, the object outside drifted into view. It wasn't a vehicle in any sense he understood. It was a massive, sleek, silvery form, floating effortlessly a few feet above the ground. It resembled no car, no drone, no spacecraft he had ever seen. The surface of the craft shimmered with a soft, iridescent glow, like liquid metal, smooth and seamless. Its size was immense, easily larger than any truck or bus Ethan had ever worked on. He stepped back instinctively as the ship glided closer, lowering itself until it was just inches above the floor of the garage. The blue light seemed to emanate from within, casting long shadows that danced eerily across the cluttered workspace. It was silent now, the hum faded to a soft, almost soothing pulse, but the weight of the moment pressed down on him like a physical force. He gripped the wrench tighter, but his thoughts scattered. What was it? A military vehicle? A government project? Or something else entirely? The craft hovered for a moment, perfectly still, and then the unmistakable sound of a hatch opening echoed through the garage. The door slid up with a soft hiss, revealing a swirling mist that poured out like smoke. It was cool, almost metallic in its scent, and the air around Ethan seemed to buzz with energy. And then it appeared. A figure stepped out from the mist, tall and elegant, its form glimmering in the pale light. At first, Ethan thought it might be a person wearing some kind of reflective suit, but as his eyes adjusted, he realized that it was not a person at all. The being before him was tall, at least 8 feet, with smooth, translucent skin that seemed to shimmer with iridescent colors. It had no visible clothing, no armor, just a body that seemed to flow and pulse with its own light. The figure's head tapered to a gentle point, and its eyes, if they could be called eyes, were deep, infinite pools of shifting color. For a long moment, neither spoke. Ethan was frozen, wrench still gripped tightly in his hand. The alien, he had to be an alien, studied him with what seemed to be quiet curiosity, its form rippling with light like it was made of glass or crystal. Finally, the being spoke. The voice was soft, melodic, like the sound of wind chimes, but with a strange, otherworldly clarity. "Are you the one they call Ethan Briggs, master of machines?" Ethan swallowed hard, his mind racing. His name. How did this thing know his name? He could barely manage a reply, his voice cracking as he tried to find words. Yeah, that's me," he stammered, his grip on the wrench loosening. What can I do for you?" The figure's colors shifted, pulsing with a deep blue. It stepped closer, its eyes locking onto Ethan with an intensity that made his heart skip a beat. "I am Captain Vera of the Sclarian fleet. We require your expertise, human." Ethan's mind raced. Sclarian fleet. He had no idea what that was, but the urgency in the alien's voice told him that this was no ordinary job. This wasn't about fixing a motorcycle or tweaking an engine. This was something far bigger. "What do you need fixed?" Ethan asked, the words slipping out before he could stop them. The alien captain's form glowed brighter, almost as if it was pleased by the question. "Our ship, human. It has a problem. A problem that you alone can solve." And just like that, Ethan's world turned upside down. The engine of stars. Ethan's pulse raced as the alien captain's glowing form hovered in front of him, and the reality of the situation started to sink in. His garage, usually a sanctuary of engines and grease, now felt impossibly small. Everything. The rain outside, the tools hanging on the walls, even the air, felt suddenly insignificant next to the being standing in front of him. I'm not sure what you mean," Ethan stammered, still gripping the wrench in his hand, though he wasn't entirely sure why. His heart hammered against his ribs. Was this some kind of elaborate prank? No, it couldn't be. The air had an electric quality to it, something far beyond any trick he'd ever encountered. Captain Vera tilted its head, the translucent skin of its face shifting colors in the dim light. "I believe you misunderstand. This is no simple repair, Earthling." The voice came again, like the ringing of wind chimes in a storm. "Our ship requires an expert, a mind capable of understanding the intricacies of both technology and biology." Ethan blinked, still trying to process the words. "Wait, you want me to fix your ship?" The alien's multicolored skin rippled like water, responding to Ethan's confusion with a gentle pulse. "Yes, you and no other. We have traveled across the stars, and our craft, our ship, is dying." Ethan's brain struggled to keep up. The idea of fixing a regular car was already complicated enough, but now he was expected to work on a starship, a ship belonging to a being who looked like it was made from liquid crystal. "You're telling me your ship is, what, broken?" Ethan asked, his voice a little too sharp, betraying the confusion swirling in his mind. "I mean, what's wrong with it? I don't even know where to start." Captain Vera didn't seem bothered by Ethan's skepticism. Instead, its glowing skin shifted again, this time taking on a shade of soft blue, as if preparing to explain something delicate. "Our ship's engine is powered by an energy system we call the astral core, a fusion of technology and living matter. It operates on harmonic frequencies, vibrations that align with the natural flow of energy through the universe. The problem, human, is that the core has fallen out of tune." Ethan's eyes widened. This was beyond anything he'd ever worked on. Machines he understood, but harmonic frequencies. Living technology. It felt like something out of a science fiction novel. Still, his mind raced, and the gears of his mechanic's brain began to turn. "You want me to tune it?" Ethan asked, disbelief hanging in his words. "Yes," Captain Vera replied, the alien's form vibrating with the weight of the request. "But not in the way you might imagine. The astral core, like all complex systems, is vulnerable to imperfection. A minor flaw in the crystal lattice, the core of our engine, has caused a cascade failure. Our vessel is barely functioning. We are stranded in your system, and our civilization depends on our ability to trade with the stars." Ethan felt his throat dry up as the magnitude of the situation set in. These beings weren't just another species. They were part of a vast network that spanned the galaxy. He was staring at a living, breathing starship, and he was expected to repair it. But what could he, a human mechanic from a small town, possibly do? "What am I supposed to do?" Ethan whispered, more to himself than to the glowing alien before him. "I'm just a mechanic. I fix cars, motorcycles, things like that." Captain Vera seemed to regard him with what could only be described as curiosity, though its face lacked the features of human expression. "You underestimate yourself, Earthling. Your ingenuity, your hands that have fixed engines and mended broken machines. This is your gift. The others we've encountered were all too caught in their ways, unable to see past the limitations of their own technology. You, however, you understand the essence of what it means to make something whole again." Ethan's mind swirled. Was this alien being praising him, or was it simply stating a fact? Either way, the weight of the situation was starting to sink in. The Sclarian fleet needed him, not just as a mechanic, but as someone who could think outside the box, someone who could apply creativity to problems that didn't have easy solutions. "Okay," Ethan said, taking a deep breath. "I'll take a look, but I'll need more details. If I'm going to fix this astral core, I need to understand how it works." Captain Vera's body shimmered with what Ethan could only describe as approval. "We will provide all the data we have on the core. But be warned, human, this is not simple work. Your world's tools are crude compared to ours, and your understanding of harmonic frequencies is limited. I can show you the fundamental principles, but the rest will be up to you." Ethan nodded slowly, his mind already racing ahead. "All right, show me what you've got. I'm gonna need all the help I can get." With a soft pulse, Captain Vera stepped aside, gesturing toward the ship. "Follow me." The ship's engine is located within the heart of the vessel. It is a place of power, and it is where the astral core resides. Ethan hesitated for a moment, still unsure of how this was all happening. But the challenge, the possibility of what he could accomplish, was too intriguing to ignore. With one last glance at his shop, his sanctuary, Ethan followed the alien captain to the ship. The moment he stepped inside the vessel, everything changed. The air inside the ship was different, charged, almost alive. The walls were smooth, made of a material that felt both organic and metallic. Every step Ethan took sent ripples through the floor, as though the entire ship was breathing. The walls were etched with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with the same light as Captain Vera's body. It was overwhelming, almost hypnotic. But Ethan's mind stayed focused. He had a job to do, and the tools of his trade, his hands, his mind, and his will, were all he had. As they walked deeper into the ship, the walls opened to reveal a vast chamber, like a high-tech engine room. In the center of the room, a massive crystalline structure hovered above the ground. It was the heart of the ship, a pulsating, glowing mass of energy that seemed to hum with an otherworldly frequency. The astral core. Ethan's eyes widened. He had never seen anything like it. He could feel the power emanating from the core, a raw energy that seemed to warp the very space around it. "This is it." Captain Vera's voice was barely a whisper now, filled with reverence. "This is the engine that drives us across the stars. And it is dying." Ethan stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. He had no idea how to fix something so alien, so complex. But something deep inside him stirred. An instinct, a spark of curiosity. He was going to figure this out. He had to. "Show me where to begin," he said, his voice steady. "The harmonics of repair." Ethan stood in awe, staring at the astral core, a glowing, pulsating mass of light and energy suspended in midair. It was beautiful in a way that defied explanation. The core shimmered with an iridescent glow, its surface rippling with patterns of light that shifted constantly, like waves of energy crashing in slow motion. It was nothing like anything Ethan had ever seen, yet it felt somehow familiar, like it belonged to the very fabric of the universe. But there was no time for admiration. The mission had been set. Captain Vera's soft, melodic voice broke through Ethan's thoughts. "The engine is failing because the core's frequencies are no longer in harmony. The system is off balance. If the disharmony is not corrected soon, the energy field will destabilize entirely, and we will be lost." Ethan took a deep breath, steadying himself. "So what exactly do you want me to do?" "I mean, I fix machines, but this is beyond me. What am I supposed to tune?" The alien captain's body shimmered, its colors shifting to a gentle purple. "You must realign the crystal lattice. The core operates through harmonic frequencies, vibrations that carry the essence of life and power. It's like tuning an instrument, but one that creates and sustains life itself. We are asking you to tune it to the proper frequency." Ethan frowned, trying to make sense of the cryptic words. Tuning? He was used to tuning engines, adjusting carburetors, or tweaking exhaust systems to get the perfect hum. But this was different. This wasn't about a few small gears. It was about aligning frequencies at a cosmic level. "Okay, so how do I even hear the right frequency?" Ethan asked. He wasn't about to admit he didn't understand the first thing about harmonics or vibrations of living energy. But inside, he felt like he was in way over his head. Captain Vera gestured to the pulsating core, its colors now shifting rapidly between blue, green, and amber. "You will feel it, human. The core sings a song, but it is not one that is easily heard. You must listen with more than your ears. You must listen with your soul. The proper frequency will resonate with you, and you will know it." Ethan didn't know how to respond. Was this some kind of strange alien wisdom, or was Captain Vera trying to tell him that there was something innate, some universal law of physics, that he just couldn't grasp? "Okay," he muttered, though he still didn't fully understand. "I'll give it a try." Captain Vera stepped back, allowing Ethan to approach the heart of the ship. The closer he got to the core, the more intense the hum became. It felt like a low vibration under his skin, like a faint tremor in the air. His hands tingled, and his chest tightened as if the energy around him was pulling him in. With each step, the core seemed to grow larger, more imposing, and yet strangely welcoming. Ethan could feel its power, an almost magnetic pull that seemed to hum in his very bones. It was as though the ship was alive, and he was standing at its very heart. He hesitated for a moment, glancing back at Captain Vera, who watched him with what could only be described as quiet anticipation. Ethan swallowed hard and then took a deep breath. Time to trust his instincts. The first thing he did was extend his hand toward the core. At first, nothing happened. But then, as his fingers came closer, the vibrations around him shifted. The hum grew louder, more distinct, until it felt like it was echoing inside his skull. His fingers quivered as if the energy itself was urging him to touch it. Ethan slowly, carefully, placed his hand on the core. The moment his skin made contact with the shimmering surface, an overwhelming surge of energy coursed through him. It was like every muscle in his body had been electrified, like every atom of his being was being pulled into a dance with the ship itself. For a moment, his vision blurred. He could feel the pulse of the core, not just as a sound, but as a living entity, a pulse that seemed to come from deep within the universe. His heart raced in response, as if sensing to its rhythm. There was no separating the two, the core and him. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was part of the process, part of the song. And then it happened. A frequency, pure, resonant, vibrated through his entire body, settling deep in his chest. It was a sound, yes, but it wasn't just a sound. It was a force, a wave that washed over him, both comforting and unsettling at the same time. Ethan's mind struggled to grasp what he was experiencing. It was like the tune of a distant planet, a frequency that spoke to something deep within him, something primal. Without thinking, his hand moved, his fingers tracing the surface of the core. As he did, the frequency seemed to shift, following the motion of his fingers. His mind buzzed with understanding. It was all connected. Every movement, every vibration. The core wasn't just a machine. It was a living, breathing thing, and it was alive with sound. Ethan's instincts kicked in. He didn't know how, but he knew exactly what needed to be done. He reached down to the tool belt around his waist and pulled out the small scanner he always carried. As the scanner beeped to life, he began to analyze the vibrations of the core, fine-tuning his approach. He adjusted the settings on the scanner to detect harmonic frequencies, trying to find the perfect pitch to resonate with the core's own hum. As the scanner displayed the frequencies, Ethan saw that it wasn't just a matter of aligning a few numbers. No, the core's pattern was erratic. The harmonic waves were disturbed, jagged like broken glass. The irregularities were everywhere, fracturing the smooth flow of energy that powered the ship. For hours, or what felt like hours, Ethan worked, adjusting his tools, manipulating the energy flow, and fine-tuning the frequencies. Each time he thought he was getting closer, the core would pulse, shifting its colors, testing him. But Ethan didn't give up. He couldn't. His mind and body were now completely synchronized with the ship's rhythms. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was part of the process, part of the music. And then, with a final adjustment, it happened. The frequencies aligned. The hum of the core stabilized, settling into a smooth, continuous vibration. The light shifted, turning from chaotic flashes to a calm, steady glow. Ethan could feel the shift in the air as the energy stabilized, a wave of warmth rushing over him as the core's power returned to balance. Ethan stepped back, breathless. The core pulsed once more, this time in harmony, resonating with a deep, satisfied hum that reverberated through the very walls of the ship. He had done it. Captain Vera stepped forward, its body shimmering in approval. "You have succeeded, human," it said, its voice almost reverent. "This ship is stable. Our mission can continue." Ethan took a shaky breath, his hand still tingling from the energy he had just experienced. It wasn't over, but this was a victory. He had tapped into something greater than himself, something beyond his comprehension. And in that moment, he understood. This wasn't just about fixing an engine. It was about unlocking the potential of the universe itself. The true power of harmony. Ethan's hands were still shaking, though the resonance of the core had faded. His mind buzzed with the aftereffects of the harmonic tuning he had just experienced. What had just happened? It was like the very fabric of reality had bent to his touch, a concept so far beyond traditional mechanics it was hard to even fathom. The ship had hummed in sync with his heartbeat, as if it were alive, responding to his every motion. He couldn't explain it, and yet, part of him knew it didn't need an explanation. The universe had simply made sense for a brief moment, and Ethan had been able to feel it. The glowing core pulsed steadily, its colors now a calm, unshifting blue. Ethan stepped back and wiped the sweat from his brow, his breath still heavy. Captain Vera, who had watched him in silence through the entire process, took a step forward, its body shimmering softly in the ambient light of the ship. "You have done more than repair the ship, human." Vera's voice carried a weight that had not been there before. "You have unlocked something deeper. You have tapped into a force that even we have struggled to understand. For this, you have our gratitude." Ethan could only nod, his throat tight. I didn't know what I was doing half the time. But I guess it worked. Vera's form shimmered slightly, colors shifting in patterns that suggested amusement. You may not have understood fully, but you did what was needed. And that is often the most important thing in the end. The captain seemed to pause, as if contemplating something. The glowing crystals embedded in its chest pulsed softly, mirroring the energy of the core behind Ethan. You are more than just a mechanic, Ethan, Vera continued, its voice softening, as though it was offering a rare insight. You have unlocked the potential of this ship, not through strength, not through science alone, but through understanding, through listening. Ethan was taken aback. Listening. To the ship, to the core. He didn't fully grasp it, but he understood the idea that he'd acted instinctively, almost as if the ship had communicated with him in a way that words couldn't. Before he could respond, a soft beep from his wrist comm device interrupted him. It was a signal from the ship's control room. Vera raised a crystalline hand, acknowledging the alert. The system has confirmed what we already knew, the captain said, its voice echoing with a newfound reverence. The ship is stable. More than that, we are now operating at optimal capacity. But this is only the beginning. Ethan's curiosity spiked. What do you mean by that? What's next? Vera's body shifted into a deep crimson hue, a sign of gravity. We are preparing for an intergalactic journey. This ship's mission is not merely to transport goods, but to bridge the divide between worlds. You have helped us, but now we must ask something more of you. The journey we are about to undertake is dangerous. If we are to succeed, we need more than just an engineer. We need someone who can bridge the gap between what is known and what lies beyond. Ethan felt the weight of the captain's words. The idea of helping an alien race with their mission was both terrifying and exhilarating. He had never imagined his life as a mechanic would lead to something so monumental. I'm not sure what you mean, Ethan replied, trying to steady his nerves. What do you need from me? Vera's eyes glowed brighter, signaling a deeper level of understanding. We seek the knowledge of other species. There are those who wish to exploit the galaxies for personal gain. To counter them, we need to form alliances, to understand those we may never have encountered. Your species, humanity, is key in this. You, Ethan, are an agent of change. For a moment, Ethan could do nothing but stare. Agent of change. That sounded like something out of a sci-fi novel. He was just a mechanic, an engineer who could fix engines and tinker with designs. He had no formal training in diplomacy, no experience in the complexities of alien politics, and certainly no understanding of galactic warfare. You've got the wrong person, he said with a nervous laugh. I just fix things. I'm not cut out for galactic diplomacy, or whatever you're talking about. Vera's colors shifted once again, but this time there was something softer in its expression. It wasn't judgment, just understanding. You have more potential than you realize, Ethan. You've shown that you can connect with the ship in ways that transcend physical limitations. That understanding is exactly what is needed. The universe is a network of energies, and you have tapped into that network. It is not only the ship that resonates with you, it is the universe itself. You are attuned to it. Ethan was speechless. He had no idea what the captain meant, but he felt the truth of it deep inside. Every moment spent working on the ship, every challenge he faced in this alien world, had opened his mind to new possibilities. He felt a sense of responsibility building in his chest, not just to help the ship or the crew, but to understand the greater web of life that stretched beyond what he had ever imagined. Okay, Ethan said, taking a deep breath. I'll do what I can. I don't know how much help I'll be, but I won't back down. Vera's form shimmered again, this time radiating with an aura of approval. Your willingness is enough. In time, you will see that the universe will open to you. What you see now is just the beginning of your journey. As the captain finished speaking, Ethan looked around the ship. The dark expanse of space stretched out beyond the reinforced windows, and the stars twinkled, almost knowingly, as if they were part of a grand design. His journey was no longer just about repairing engines. It was about something far greater, about understanding and bridging the gaps between the known and the unknown, between humanity and the universe. Suddenly, the walls of the ship began to hum again, and a new sense of urgency filled the air. The ship was ready. It was time to begin the mission, and Ethan, the mechanic who had simply fixed engines, was now an essential part of a much larger, much more complex journey. The ship began to move, the lights dimming as it powered up, its engines now running in perfect harmony. Outside, the dark expanse of space awaited them, and Ethan knew that there would be no turning back. He was not just a mechanic anymore. He was a part of something much bigger. The universe had opened, and now he would help steer its course. As the ship hurtled through the stars, Ethan felt a strange sense of calm. He was no longer just a bystander in the universe. He was part of the symphony, a player in the grand cosmic concert. Whatever came next, he knew one thing for sure: humanity had a place in the stars. And it was just beginning. A new kind of war. Ethan stood at the observation deck of the ship, watching as the stars streaked by in a blur of light. The ship had entered a warp tunnel, the lights outside twisting and bending in impossible ways. His hands rested against the cool glass, the vibrations of the ship humming through his fingertips. For a moment, it was as though the universe itself was alive, an endless flow of energy and motion, with him right at the heart of it. He wasn't the same person who had walked into Kang's performance shop months ago. The mechanic who fixed engines and made machines go faster was gone. In his place was something else. Someone who had touched the core of the universe itself and had begun to understand its rhythms. He felt a strange connection to everything around him, as though the ship, the stars, and even the very energy coursing through space were all tied together. But just as he was starting to appreciate the calm of space, the peace was shattered by a sharp chime that rang out through the ship's systems. "Captain Vera," a voice echoed over the intercom. "We've detected an incoming ship. It's not from the Crystalline Federation." Ethan spun around, his heart racing. Captain Vera had been in deep conversation with him moments before, discussing the next steps in their mission, but now the ship had entered uncharted space. They were no longer in the calm stretches between star systems. There was something out there, a threat. Vera's voice, as always, was calm but now laced with an edge of urgency. "Prepare for contact. Set course for the coordinates I will send. Ethan, I need you in the engine room immediately." Ethan nodded without thinking. The words "prepare for contact" sounded far more ominous than they had any right to. He had never been in a real combat situation before. He was just a mechanic. But he trusted Vera, and he had learned a lot from the captain's unwavering confidence. He made his way quickly through the ship's corridors, the smooth walls glowing faintly in the dim light. As he approached the engine room, he felt a strange unease building inside him. This wasn't a routine mission anymore. He was starting to understand that there was something more to the Crystalline Federation's operations than just trade and diplomacy. This was bigger than they had let on. Inside the engine room, Vera was already waiting, its crystal body shimmering with purpose. The ship's engines thrummed at a low, almost meditative frequency, but Ethan could sense the tension in the air. "What's going on, Captain?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "A new threat has emerged," Vera replied. "We are being pursued by an unknown faction. They seek to undermine the Federation's efforts to maintain peace across the galaxy. Their ships are not like anything we've encountered before. We need to outrun them or prepare for battle." Ethan's mind raced. Outrun them? Was that even possible? He looked over the engine systems, trying to understand how he could help. The ship had been running at full capacity after his modifications, but if they were dealing with a new enemy, would it be enough? Vera's colors flickered, as if reading his thoughts. "We may not be able to outrun them, but we can outsmart them. This ship was designed for speed, but its true power lies in its adaptability. We need to push its capabilities beyond the normal limits. Ethan's pulse quickened. Beyond the limits. Yes, Vera said. You understand frequency modulation. This ship was constructed with harmonic resonances at its core. I believe you can find a way to make it respond differently, in a way that will give us the advantage. Ethan wasn't sure if he understood fully, but he knew one thing. They needed to act fast. He nodded, already moving to the ship's controls. The more he worked with the ship, the more he realized how deeply it was tied to the natural forces of the universe. There had to be a way to use that to their advantage, to tap into the frequencies and resonance of the ship in a way no one had thought of before. He began running diagnostics, quickly analyzing the energy signatures and looking for anomalies. There was something different about the enemy ship, something subtle, yet there. The technology was advanced, alien, even, but there was a flaw. Like any machine, it had weaknesses. Vera, Ethan called, studying the data on his screen. The enemy ship is using a low-frequency pulse to disrupt communications and navigation systems. We can block it, but I need to enhance the ship's own harmonic output. Vera's body shifted in an array of colors, a sign of approval. Do what you must, Ethan. We are depending on you. His hands flew over the console, tweaking the ship's energy matrix and recalibrating the resonance amplifiers. It was risky. He was pushing the ship beyond its usual operating capacity, something he'd never attempted before. But he didn't have a choice. The ship was a marvel of technology, built on a foundation of sound and vibration, and Ethan had learned to understand it in ways no one else had. He could feel the ship's energy resonating with him, responding to his commands as though it were alive. For a brief moment, everything went quiet. Ethan held his breath, waiting for the ship to react. Then, as if in response to his silent plea, a burst of energy shot through the core. The ship trembled and the lights flickered, but the frequencies stabilized, amplifying in a dazzling display of blue light. The engines roared to life, faster than before, more powerful than ever. We're ready, Ethan said, barely able to believe it himself. But just as he thought they might be able to outrun the enemy, the warning system blared again, and the display on the screen showed an approaching force. The enemy ship had closed in. Too late, Vera said, the calm in its voice betraying the seriousness of the situation. We've entered their range. Prepare for combat. Ethan felt his stomach drop. This was it. They were about to face an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. The stakes were higher than ever. The Federation's mission, his place in the galaxy, and perhaps even the fate of humanity were on the line. The ship shifted, its massive engines now firing with the power Ethan had unlocked. The stars outside twisted as they entered another warp, the tension rising with each passing second. He had done everything he could. Now, it was time to face what was coming. And in that moment, he knew this wasn't just a mission anymore. This was a new kind of war, one where humanity's ingenuity would decide the outcome, into the unknown. The ship plunged into a new realm of space, a void where stars were few and far between. The dark expanse stretched on endlessly, and the hum of the ship's engines vibrated deep within Ethan's chest. His pulse quickened as he watched the displays flicker and shift, the proximity warnings flashing red. The enemy was closing in fast. His modifications to the ship had worked. Its systems were firing at full capacity, humming with the energy of the harmonic frequencies he had unlocked. Yet he knew they were still outmatched. The enemy was relentless, faster than anything humanity had ever seen, and now they were in the midst of it. Ethan stood at the command console, his fingers poised over the controls, watching the enemy ship's trajectory. The radar showed it moving rapidly, like a predator hunting its prey. The technology the enemy wielded was alien in every sense of the word, its systems not based on metals or engines, but on pulses of energy, invisible waves that bent the very fabric of space around them. The threat wasn't just their speed. It was their ability to manipulate space itself. We need to make evasive maneuvers, Ethan said, his voice sharp. "If we stay in a straight line, they'll trap us." Vera's body shifted to a deep green, its crystal-like form glowing as if absorbing the tension in the room. "We are aware. We are already adjusting the ship's trajectory. But you must understand, this ship is not just a vessel. It is a conduit of energy, and we are preparing to activate its full potential." Ethan's eyebrows furrowed. "Activate its full potential?" "Yes," Vera replied, the gravity of its tone filling the room. "We are not simply escaping. We are entering a domain of the unknown. What lies ahead is a field of unstable wormholes, portals that can lead us anywhere in the galaxy, even beyond. The enemy will follow, but they do not know the dangers that lie ahead." Ethan's mind raced. Wormholes. The very concept had been theoretical for most of human history, an idea explored in science fiction, not something anyone had actually encountered. But here, with Vera and this ship, it was real. The idea of plunging into one of those unstable, swirling tunnels was terrifying. He couldn't even imagine the risk involved. And yet, it seemed to be their only option. "We have no choice," Vera continued. "We will initiate the hyperdrive system once we reach the wormhole's edge. You must ensure the resonance of the ship remains stable. This is the only way to lose the enemy and enter the safe zones." Ethan nodded grimly. His hands moved quickly, adjusting the control settings for the resonance frequencies, ensuring that the ship's harmonic vibrations were at the precise level for this next leap. He could feel the ship beneath him, its engines, its energy, its very soul, all aligning with his thoughts. It was as if he and the ship were one, connected in a way that transcended the physical. But as the ship neared the wormhole's edge, Ethan felt a deep unease settling in his stomach. There was something he hadn't fully understood yet about the ship's capabilities, and now he feared it might be too late to learn. "Are we ready?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. "Ready," Vera responded. "Initiating now." Suddenly, the ship jerked forward, a surge of energy propelling them toward the pulsating mass of light and color that swirled ahead. The wormhole loomed like a great cosmic mouth, ready to swallow them whole. Ethan's hands tightened on the console, adjusting the ship's energy flow to match the chaotic vibrations of the wormhole's entry. The harmonic resonance of the ship was the only thing standing between them and total destruction. It was a delicate balance, one that relied on precision. Too much energy, and the ship would be torn apart. Too little, and they wouldn't make it through. As they approached the event horizon, the ship's hum became deafening. The walls of the cockpit began to vibrate violently, and the stars outside twisted into strange, kaleidoscopic patterns. It was like watching the very fabric of space and time unravel before their eyes. Ethan's breath hitched, his nerves on edge. He could see the enemy ship closing in behind them, its dark, sleek form racing to intercept. "We're almost there." Vera's voice cut through the chaos, steady and unwavering. "Hold on." The ship entered the wormhole with a sudden jolt, and for a moment, everything went silent. Then, the universe around them exploded into a riot of colors, beyond anything Ethan had ever seen. The stars, planets, and galaxies warped and bent, swirling like a living thing. The sensation was overwhelming, like being caught in the eye of a storm, with no sense of up or down, only the dizzying rush of space folding and unfolding in all directions. Ethan gritted his teeth and focused on the ship's energy flow. He could feel the resonance inside the core, like a pulse that matched his own heartbeat. It was working. The harmonic frequencies were holding steady. They were in control for now. But the enemy ship was right behind them. And as they sped through the wormhole, Ethan could see the other ship struggling to follow, unable to adjust its own systems to handle the tumultuous flow of energy. They were at a disadvantage. The crystalline ship had been designed for this kind of travel, but the enemy's ship wasn't. Ethan's eyes widened as the wormhole began to stretch and twist, creating multiple paths that branched out like the limbs of a great cosmic tree. Their path was splitting, and he had no idea where any of the forks would lead. Time and space were becoming malleable, and he had no choice but to trust his instincts. "Captain," Ethan shouted, "I'm losing control of the path. The wormhole is destabilizing." Vera's colors pulsed rapidly. "You must stay focused. Trust the ship's resonance. It will guide you." As the wormhole fractured further, Ethan felt a sudden surge of energy. The ship had stabilized, but the enemy wasn't far behind. Whatever lay ahead, whatever path they chose, there would be no turning back. And deep down, Ethan realized something. There was no such thing as safe space anymore. The journey into the unknown had begun. They were about to face something even greater than they had imagined. The enemy was only the beginning.